Welcome everyone to today's webinar. This is Survival to Success, How Nonprofits Can Boost Revenue and Results. My name is David Gates and I'm the Director of Online Education here at Grant Station. Now today's webinar will focus on helping you break free from the survival treadmill and move towards sustained revenue. If you are looking for more sustained revenue and do not have a Grant Station membership right now, is a great time to check us out. We're in the midst of our summer sale where you can get a 1-year membership for $199 or a 2-year membership for $299. And I'll drop a link to that in the chat shortly. Now, your presenter today is Donald Summers. Donald is the founder and CEO of Altruist Partners, LLC, a pioneering social impact advisory firm dedicated to helping mission-driven organizations achieve their most ambitious goals. He is also the founder and executive director of the Altruist Accelerator, the firm's nonprofit arm, which delivers the Altruist growth and impact methodology to ambitious nonprofits and NGOs of all sizes and stages. His work has generated hundreds of millions in new revenue and capital, strengthened boards, staff, and volunteer teams, and advanced some of today's most crucial social change efforts. And today he's going to share his expertise and guide you through the essential ingredients for organizational growth. So please welcome Donald Summers.
David, thank you so much. I'm so honored to be among this group of social impact professionals. Our work is more important than ever. So the first thing I want to say, and it'll be the last thing I'll say, is thank you for the work you're already doing. Amplifying your work, creating the environment, the resources, the teamwork, the strategy, the tactics to enable you to fulfill your full promise and potential, not just nibble around the edges, not just solve some of the problem, but we want to solve all of the problem. As government steps away, your efforts are more and more important. So this webinar provides an overview of everything we've learned over the past 20 years of helping nonprofits achieve breakout success. This is an audacious promise, and many of you may roll your eyes, but I promise you it is, if anything, understated. This is an impact system. It's an integrated management platform. Nonprofits that follow it achieve dramatic gains in impact and revenue. We've been doing this for 20 years. Before I begun this work, I was a foundation CEO. I was a nonprofit fundraiser for many years, and then I said, oh, I've got the best job in the world. I get to give money away to nonprofits. The way the board wanted to do it, though, was give out small grants a little bit at a time. And I was looking at the grant applications, and I said to my board, there's fantastic programs in here. $25,000 or $10,000 or $5,000 isn't going to do it. They need help. There's clearly high potential programs here, but we need more strategy and execution. They don't have financials. They don't have KPIs, key performance indicators. Let's dig in and help them. My board didn't want to do that. They wanted just to give money away and have fun. I wanted to dig in and help the nonprofits. So I quit the foundation, started my consultancy, and I've been generating these types of hockey sticks ever since. We've raised over $1 billion. We've launched dozens and dozens of high impact nonprofits, but I did it from a hands-on, like a fractional executive. I got involved and I dug in with the teams. And now 20 years later, what I've done is package it all. I'm giving away in my book and in our nonprofit all of the tools and processes. It's very specific. It's not just what to do, it's how to do it, in what order, with tools and templates. Now, it's not easy. It'll demand focused, strong leadership. But my promise to you is if you have the grit and the focus and the discipline to implement this very sophisticated, it's simple, but it's sophisticated at the same time. If you can implement this system, you will break out of survival. You'll get off the subsistence treadmill and you can get into the impact fast lane. This is a methodology that's not based in nonprofits. It's based in entrepreneurial growth. It drives high performance at every type of organization. And it works. It's based in the literature. It's based in practice, and I'm so honored to share it with you today. This is an example of the dollars that we've added. If you don't believe it, you're right to be skeptical. There's a lot of snake oil salespeople out there promising all this magic. This is hard work, but if you want to take a look at our case studies and some of the results that this methodology has delivered, here's the proof. Now, enough about me and why this is important. Let's get into the methodology itself. We call it an impact system. There's 3 components that every nonprofit needs to grow, to achieve its full potential. They're all very specific and prescriptive. You can't just take a casual glance at this stuff. There's a devil's in the details. So you're going to get an overview on this webinar, but you're going to get links to all of the specifics. You're going to get the tools and the templates, and you're going to get a complete guide as a result of this. So don't worry about taking furious notes, or if it goes too fast, all these resources will be laid out for your later reference. So the 3 elements of getting out of survival and into the success lane: you need a business plan, you need a revenue engine, and you need an execution dashboard. Now, notice I didn't say strategic planning and fundraising and implementation. We use all the language and terms from entrepreneurial organizations, and we use tools that help. Doesn't matter what your tax status is. These are the tools that drive growth. And, we see so many nonprofits struggle because they try and reinvent things. And they're following what other nonprofits do. And what we've discovered is, if you look outside of the nonprofit sector, and if you capture the tools that drive growth and performance for every type of organization, amazing things can happen. Okay, so I'll conclude this slide by saying each of these 3 pillars has 2 subcomponents, because it'll help you build them step by step. Let's first of all talk about a business plan. Now, we've all heard about, oh gosh, nonprofits need a strategic plan. Where did that word come from? Well, the truth is, most people don't know what strategy is. They confuse it with goals or objectives. Most strategic plans are very vague. They're often ambiguous documents. They're written by committee. They're not actionable. They end up on a shelf and things go back to the status quo. We've seen this hundreds and hundreds of times. So we're trying to use a different framework here. So I don't care if you're a nonprofit, talk about a business plan. Okay, so yes, we know that nonprofits have their own culture, but ultimately you need to generate money and spend money. And the business plan model is very standardized. It's very robust. It works. And the truth is, here's the background piece. The Better Business Bureau and Give.org did a survey some years ago, and they found that 4 out of 5 Americans don't trust nonprofits to use their resources well. That's horrible. But the lack of trust out there has been driving, as you've all experienced, a rapid decline in individual contributions to the nonprofit space. It's fallen by half in over a decade. We need new tools to build trust, to establish transparency, to create credibility. And in our experience, strategic plans, as they say in the Southeast, that dog doesn't hunt. Business plans work. Now, we'll talk about how to build one, but these are roadmaps, they're internal and external documents. It'll tell your staff what you're doing. It brings people together as high-performing teams. It helps new people into your organization, gives them insight into what you're doing. It allows your board to be effective directors. It enables you to grow your ecosystem of support. It's your marketing and your fundraising and your grant writing library. If you have a business plan, you can hand it off to a grant writer and they can go to town. How many of us struggle reinventing our grants and reinventing grant messages? If you can take the time to write a business plan, you can just assembly line your grant process. And again, it establishes trust and transparency. It can pass what's known as due diligence. People won't think very hard about writing you a check for $50. But they're going to think very hard about writing you a check for $500,000. They're going to want to know that you're going to use the money well. So this is that process, whether they use the term or not, it's called due diligence. People do their homework on you. A business plan is an essential tool to say, we've got our act together. We're very specific on what we're doing, how we're going to do it, et cetera, et cetera. And we're going to get into the meat of a business plan later. And finally, the core part of a business plan is you get it 80% good and you launch it and you continuously iterate it. The old nonprofit strategic planning process where you get this pretty plan with lots of pictures, it takes you 9 months to write it, and then you review it annually. That's dead. That's too slow. It doesn't work. That's going to get you into, you're going to be stuck on the struggle bus. Business plans are dynamic. You adjust them often very, very frequently at first. They have a multi-year projection. They typically have a 3 to 5 year financial horizon, and you're constantly improving them. So you write one plan and you constantly iterate it and improve it as you learn more. Let's talk about the details. To get a business plan, you first have to start with just a skeleton. What is our goal? A BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. And this is a decision that the board pulls together with the CEO and say, what are we going to do? What does it look like if we're successful? And it's none of this, well, we're going to empower members of our community to da-da-da. No, you have to have a very specific, often quantitative goal, X to Y by Z. We often talk about SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timed. But if you have a BHAG, you hang everything off of that BHAG. And you have your mission, your vision, and your values. But then, those are very common in the nonprofit landscape. But now we introduce some new terms. What's your value proposition? Why you? And why are you good? And how can you prove it? What is your impact and growth strategy? Your impact is how you're delivering change at the unit level of service. Your growth strategy is how you're going to, what choices and behaviors are you going to make to expand your service to everyone who needs it within your geographic scope? What are you going to do in the next year? And then what are your key performance indicators along the bottom? Now, some of you, this will be familiar stuff. Some of you may have never heard the word KPI before. Rest assured, if you're unfamiliar with these terms, we provide a complete explanation and resources, and we'll give you the pointers at the end of the webinar. So if this comes off as technical, it's okay. And if you're not familiar with this information, if you haven't seen this frame before, this is really going to help you. So we hope you can, hopefully the jargon isn't too annoying. I know this might sound a lot of business. It sounds businessy, but there's a reason for that. Most wealth in the United States is generated from entrepreneurial sources, from people who found and grow their businesses. That's the greatest source of wealth in the United States. And what this framework allows you to do is use that same language. So when you get in front of these people, you're using the same terms. I didn't like any of this stuff when I started my career. I hated what business was doing to the world. Finance was boring and awful. And I looked at corporations as extractive monsters. And over the course of my career, I came to adopt these tools. You know why? As a fundraiser, they worked. They built trust and they moved money from the private sector into the charitable sector. And so we're very intentional at using these tools. And I'm not trying to sound like a big bad business person for some random reason. These are the tools that have proven to be effective in capturing and allocating capital for your mission. And I know it's a different framework and it's a different style and a different language. And some of you might not like it, and you're forgiven. These same tools have done very bad things in the world, but when you can repurpose them for good, amazing things happen, and we have so many stories about that. So, first of all, back to the technical piece here. You want a one-page business framework to get your board focused on exactly where you're going to go and make sure your executive teams and your staff are like, okay, we're going to do this. Doesn't have to be perfect. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. But as soon as you get this 80% good, go to the next piece. And I'm going to do an entire webinar in June on just this slide. I'm going to unpack every one of these 14 sections. This is called a world-class investment-grade business plan. It is not a strategic plan. It is very, very specific. what problem you're solving, what the solution looks like, why your organization is the best to solve it, the value proposition, what your BHAG is, what your market is, your addressable market, and who the alternative service providers are, what your impact and growth strategy is, what your crawl, walk, run milestones, what are your KPIs, how are you going to market, how are you going to raise the money, how are you going to mitigate the unavoidable risks, what is your organizational projection, 3 to 5 year financial projection, and your team. All of this in very specific, concise terms, 10 pages or less. You boil it down into a 10-page slide deck. It can take some time to do it. But again, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. There is a link to this template. If you click on this link, you'll pull up the actual business plan template right here. Read the links and the articles in here. Take a look at, drill down. If you gloss over this, if you don't take time to unpack it, it'll be very, very hard to do this well. So again, the first message to everyone is the devil's really in the details on this work.
Donald,
Okay.
there was one question about the BHAG. Could you explain what BHAG is?
Absolutely. One of the best scholars of organizational management and theory in the world, his name is Jim Collins, and he teaches at Stanford. And he wrote a book called Good to Great. And what he did is he looked at the stock market and he said, why are some companies really growing and performing and others are just struggling? And he and his research team spent years on this and devised a set of principles and practices behind the great companies. And he said all of them had what's known as a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. And he uses the moon landing. He said in Robert Kennedy, the president in the 60s, said, by the end of the decade, we are going to put a man on the moon. And that was the BHAG. It was very difficult. It was very specific, and it was time bound. And he says all the best organizations have a BHAG. And if you're struggling for survival, it's very difficult to understand, to even get in the headspace where you can have a BHAG. So great question. And it's an example that every one of the components on this is very, very specific. And you should learn the history and the language behind them. And again, the good news is you don't have to go out and find all this for yourself. I found all of this over a 20-year journey of trial and error, trying to figure out how to get the nonprofits to grow. And BHAG is an important one. I hope I answered your question.
Yes.
But anyhow, if you don't have an X to Y by Z, you want to be audacious, but not delusional, right? It should be very, very hard. Your likelihood of success should be 5%. But you hang everything off of that BHAG, then you have, if this is your goal, how are you going to get there? What is the delta? What is the improvement you're going to deliver at the unit of service? How many of those units you're going to deliver? So you got to have the whole narrative here. Okay. Now, this is so much related to our attitude as well as our ability to write. So many folks are uncomfortable with letting something go that's not perfect, or they're afraid they'll look bad. And we're here to tell you that get it 80% good and launch it. No one's going to care if you have a typo in your business plan. You're working on an urgent problem. Launch it. Have your bias be towards action and analysis and action and improvement, not analysis and reflection. That's wisdom that's taken me many, many years to learn. So you have the template. You have some articles behind the template in those links explaining what it is. And there's, again, this is only the tip of the iceberg and the resources that we're offering. Remember, we built all this stuff up for years, and we're ready to share it all with you. And again, we'll talk more about sharing the specifics at the end of the webinar. So this is just the first pillar, and it can take 1, 2, 3 months to even get a draft of one of these produced. But once you have a business plan, it's your chief fundraising tool, and then you're ready to build a revenue engine. Now, there's a lot of moving parts in this slide, and I'll go through them very slowly. There's 3 types of money that come from 6 places. The nonprofit revenue landscape is, as you know, as everyone knows, it's very complex. There's dollars everywhere, and it's hard to find and hard to sustain. Well, what we're offering with our methodology is how to approach these domains, pick the right ones, approach them effectively, and generate sustainable growing revenue. You can earn the money, you can get it given to you, or you can get it invested in you as a loan. 3 types of money. Comes from 6 different places: individuals, foundations, corporations, agencies, well, not so much anymore, service clients, earned income, and impact capital. We'll talk about impact capital later. That's basically institutions or individuals that give you a low interest or high risk loan. And then you have subsegments, right? And already your head's exploding. There's all these different domains, all these different types. How do we know which ones to fit our mission? Well, that's where expertise is. And I write extensively about how to pick the right strategies in my book. But what we want to get you to recognize now is one term: cost per dollar. How much money do you spend on your fundraising efforts, and what is the return on that spend? That's known as cost per dollar. So if you're running an efficient, scalable organization where you're going to be able to raise money more and more each year to fuel a growing organization, you should have a cost per dollar of about 10 cents. So you spend $100,000 on your fundraising enterprise and you raise $1 million. Sounds good, doesn't it? This is the pathway to achieve it. You get out of the small dollar. Most nonprofits are small because they're playing small ball. You're not going to ever grow your nonprofit by running an auction or a gala. Please. It's so hard to break nonprofits. It's like an addiction. Bake sales, thrift shops. Those are fine if your organization wants to stay small and your unit of service is very small. There's no problem with that. PTAs are wonderful. You can have a bake sale for a parent group in an elementary school and run a bake sale and an auction all day long. God bless you all. But if you're working on serious social issues with lots of people that you need to serve and you're running a bake sale or an auction, it's not going to fly. And you know the struggle. So I write extensively in my book, and we talk about what are the low ROI strategies and what are the high ROI strategies. And we're not just going to give you these big platitudes, these bromides about what to do. If you look at these links, there's going to be very specific templates for absolutely what you do in every segment at every stage and how you structure your fundraising operation. It is a step-by-step, paint-by-numbers process. So I'm going to pull up an example. Here's a template, and here's an example. Here are all the various domains. I'm going to collapse all of these. So here's the various domains, and here's some subdomains. We have major investors and monthly investors, and there's another row that's often common: plan giving. And this is how to set a goal, what average investment, how many prospects, exactly your tactics for how do you find people, how do you build trust with them, how do you propose, how do you report, how do you staff it, what's their budget. And I've got this filled in for all the possible domains. These are just example tactics. In my book, I walk through each of these tactics, explain it. There's scripts. We have job descriptions, staffing, budgeting, memos. The whole thing is in a box. Again, we spent many, many years building and documenting all this stuff. So rest assured, I know you're getting a lot of information on this webinar, but I've been to a lot of webinars and people they stop at the easy truth. Oh, you need to build relationships. Well, what does that mean and how do I do it? Well, this is a very specific pathway for building empathetic, trusting, ethical, effective relationships, not just with major investors or monthly supporters, but with foundations, corporations, agencies, how to earn the money, and so forth. So this is a one-page development plan that guides your entire team on exactly what to do. Now then, as readers of my book will know, it's not enough to have a plan. You have to have a scorecard that tests the implementation of that plan. So just like we have a business plan and a revenue engine and an execution dashboard, for our revenue engine, we have to have our strategies and tactics. And then we need to say, how are we implementing those tactics? So now we get down to the metrics-driven execution. So you count up the numbers of people by stage. I put in some examples here on a previous webinar. You count the number of people in each of these domains at what the relationship stage is, how much money you have in the pipeline. And this is the most important thing. If you learn nothing else from this webinar, count the number of face-to-face or personal interactions between your team and your current and prospective supporters. Those are called contacts. And those are the things that lead to money, not events, not newsletters, not seminars, not email. You need to get out and talk one-on-one to people. And it often takes 10, 15, 20 contacts to generate an investment. So you have to track how you're doing and set specific targets and make sure that people are moving through the process from stranger to supporter. This is the template, and I'm going to show you what a client pipeline looks like. A lot of numbers on here, but this is from our client that we took from 1 million to 5 million in about 4 years because they followed a very disciplined process. Every 2 weeks, they track the total number of prospects, right? The dollars in the pipeline. They raised 4.6 million because they tracked their individual contact reports and they held themselves accountable. Again, tons of information. It's all explained very, very clearly. We just want to give you a high-level overview of the type of specific, disciplined, data-driven process that characterizes all effective fundraising teams. So again, to figure out which of the strategies and tactics, consult with an expert. I've written down a lot of stuff. You tend to find in the fundraising world, everyone, if you have a hammer, everything's a nail. Some people are good at individual fundraising. Some people are good with corporates. You have great grant writers out there. You have agency specialists. Fewer people know how to develop sophisticated earned income strategies like for-profit subsidiaries or certifications or licensing campaigns. Those are hugely high potential, and even fewer have ever built a social impact bond. But try to consult with people who've who've looked at the whole keyboard. I've got resources to help you target new sources of dollars. And again, we have a nonprofit that can help you. So don't worry about it if this is a lot of information. Okay. Business plan, revenue engine. And again, I'm just giving you tips of the waves here, folks. Again, you're going to have all the resources to read into this later. Let's take a look at the third piece, which is the execution dashboard. This is so critical, and we install these in our clients. That's how we make sure you have a plan and you have an engine. Now you got to see, are we monitoring our progress? Are we tracking and measuring the right performance data? Those are called key performance indicators. And you must track a very, very small set. They're expensive to do. And how you track them and how you engage people to get their attention and hold them accountable to a small set of key performance indicators. If you do that well, you will grow. It's inevitable. But it's hard, but this is how you do it. This is a typical dashboard where you look at, okay, what is the quantity of service we're providing? Here's where we are, here's the problem, and here's how much of it we've solved, and here's how much we have to go. Here's our impact at the unit level of service. Here's how much money we're making, and here's our finance, here's how we're spending our money, and here's how we're making our money. This is a simplified dashboard, okay? It requires expertise to set these up. We see many folks try to DIY it. It's challenging. Don't worry about data visualization yet. Just start by being clear and simple. There's a very specific pathway to how to pick numbers around each of these areas: program growth, organizational growth, finances, and revenue. We have a clear set of indicators already, okay? So we're going to show you what you start this again, before you try to create a visual dashboard, which is very difficult. Follow the template. Oh, excuse me. I'm going to open up my link here. So let's say key performance indicators typically have four areas of concern: your program impact, your scale, how big you are, and the quality of your impact. your revenue, your current revenue, your contact activity, and your cost per dollar. Your expense budget, your stakeholders, and your organizational KPIs. All of these measures come from your business plan. This is just a template. And then for each of these KPIs, you have a lead and a lag. A lag is the result that you're trying to create. A lead is the thing that you're doing. So if a lagging indicator is dollars raised, a leading indicator is conversations with prospects. So you set up a cause and effect relationship. And if you focus on the leads, the lags will happen. And you can do that with every aspect of your organization. Now, marinate on that for a second. Most organizations are filled with people that have kind of different ideas about what they're doing, and they make different assumptions, and they've never really boiled down either their program or their revenue or their organizational development or their morale into a very specific set of key performance indicators. And you don't have to go crazy with this stuff. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. But if you start picking leading and lagging indicators on a problem that you want to solve, and you track the leading and lagging indicators every 2 weeks, incredible things happen. It's all written in a book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution, right? Have a wildly important goal, have a compelling scorecard, understand the lead measure, and have a cadence of accountability. That's all built into this methodology. It's how all effective organizations grow. And it's very unusual to see this in the nonprofit space, but we're here to share it with you. Once you have a lead and a lag, you set a goal, you find the data source, you have the directly responsible individual, you have the input schedule. You take the KPIs from your business plan and you create a simplified chart here, and then you can actually start tracking the numbers. Okay? Now, the visualization is optional. We played with lots of different visualization packages. They tend to get really messy, and you need to keep it simple. If you haven't done an execution dashboard before, we recommend just start with a spreadsheet and say, what's our goal? Where are we? And how are we tracking? And you can make a chart later. Okay. So where do these KPIs come from? You take a rough cut on the key performance indicators from your business plan. You have your goal. You have your strategy, which is how you're going to achieve the goal, and you have the key performance indicators that tell you whether that strategy is successful or not. Okay. And again, there's articles, and if you read the articles and you read the template, all that stuff is explained. And as you launch your business plan, you already know that you're not going to sit in an office and rewrite it. You're going to get out and share it with people and test it and ask them what they think. And you're going to try some things, and you're going to keep your business plan reflecting your own learning. When you get that process and you've got some miles under the tires, typically 3, 4, 5 months, then you're actually ready to start the dashboard, and you start picking KPIs. And a funny thing happens when you start picking KPIs for a dashboard. You realize that the KPIs you had in your business plan aren't quite on target. So there's a reciprocal process of improvement. The dashboard, creating a dashboard, influences your plan. And then when you run the dashboard, you'll find out whether your strategies are good or not. You don't do an annual review. You don't go, oh my gosh, let's write an annual report and find out if our strategies are working. Every 2 weeks, every month, you're collecting data to tell you if your strategies are on target. This is business intelligence. This is data-driven organizations. And again, you'll kill yourself if you try to collect 50 KPIs at once. But start with 3, start with 4 on the most important things and build from there. Keep it simple, keep it concise. And once you get into the habit and the discipline of getting everybody in the room for 2 weeks and saying, are these the right KPIs? Do we all know what a KPI is? Incredibly healthy processes happen. And we found that it typically takes an organization between 6 and 12 months to absorb all these capabilities, to write the plan, to build the first couple cylinders in your revenue engine, and get the bones of a basic dashboard. And boy, though, right when you get them all firing together, that's when the hockey stick starts to happen. Okay. But remember, this stuff's expensive to do, so keep it simple. As I said, I started my career as a fractional executive. I've been on the management teams of hundreds of organizations. And when I started a new engagement, I'd had to explain all this stuff from scratch. And finally, I said, I'm just going to take 5 years and write the book. This was incredibly painful and difficult. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy, but everything I've learned is right here in order. There's how to understand your capabilities, how to align your teams, how to create a business plan, how to test it, how to build the revenue engine, how to build a dashboard. And then there's some really good insights that we've learned from how to run effective boards and have psychological safety and a positive workplace culture that supports all of this stuff. So everything is in the book. Additionally, we have a nonprofit support community. If you want help implementing this stuff, this is very much like an instruction manual for an airplane. Very clear, very specific. There's a lot. You got to follow it directly or bad things happen. It won't work. You won't crash, but you got to get it right. So instead of the expensive and difficult process of joining someone's executive team, we founded a nonprofit. We've put all the tutorials online, all the forms, real world examples. There's a community of supportive people. You can just join the nonprofit accelerator and go through and learn this stuff at your own pace. I don't mean to be self-promotional here. We're giving this away. We don't make any money from our nonprofit. We've realized that this is such an effective methodology. Look at our case studies. We have the world's most effective support organization for foster youth, the world's most effective reforestation effort. We've done incredible work. Our clients have done incredible work in education, in sustainability, in human services. We just want to share it. So I'm not here to sell you on this stuff, and I'm certainly not here to tell you this is easy, but we want to share that the book and the nonprofit accelerator are here to help you. And again, we're living into our brand of altruism. We want to help. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm sure you have many questions. Thank you for sitting through a fire hose of information. We hope this is helpful, and I'll turn it back over to David to pick up some questions.
Take some questions here. But before we jump into the questions, I do just want to mention, Donald's going to be back with us on July 10th for a webinar that's going to go into the business plans specifically. So I'm going to enter that there. So drop that there for you. So let's look at a few of the questions. Now, Judy says, for business plans, would you say this is similar to an organization's annual work plan?
Annual work plans? No. Annual work plans are kind of a legacy model. A business plan is real time. And you should, great question, by the way. The organization should only have one plan. And the reason we call it a business plan, because it makes people stop and say, wait a minute, you're a nonprofit. Why do you have a business plan? Because you say, you know what, we're not really a nonprofit. We're a social impact enterprise. We use robust methodologies. Here's our business plan. We adjust our business plan in real time. The old concept, and I was trained in this in graduate school, we all were. Oh, you have your annual work plan, you have your budget cycle. The world moves much faster than that these days. So have a business plan. Yes, you want to update your financial projections and your organizational charts to reflect, push it out every year. But often our clients are really refining their plans quarterly, and they only have one, or all their plans are in one document.
Makes sense. Then another question. Emily says, would you suggest having a business plan for both the organization as a whole and the programs or projects within the organization?
Brilliant question. In my book, I talked about 3 levels of information. Level 1, 2, 3. Level 1 is organization-wide. That's your business plan. It's the whole organization. You might have multiple programs, right? Programs, business units are level 2. You have fundraising, you have HR, you have marketing, you have program A, program B. Those are distinct areas within an organization. Then we talk about level 3. That's the frontline work. Those are individual teams and staff doing the work. So I write it in my book. How do you make sense of all that complexity? Well, first of all, make it clear. Are we talking level 1, level 2, or level 3? Now, a business plan is all level 1. It'll have your biggest program KPIs and it'll talk about your strategies, but it's often not enough to support and really define your teams. So it's totally fine to have a subsidiary document, it could be an addendum in your business plan or a separate document that puts a little bit more flesh on the bone about how you're running your program, right? And if you need more narrative or you need more workshop, keep it short. But it's okay to have, you'll have organization-wide KPIs, and then you'll have KPIs. You have fundraising KPIs, you'll have program KPIs, et cetera. So it's okay to carve out a little separate space, but just be very clear that you have one overall business plan, and then you might have some subsidiary documents that all roll up into the business plan. What you don't want to do is have the big mess of documents everywhere. You want to have a very clear architecture and have as little planning as possible with the right KPIs. You'll find that you can fit all your organizational complexity typically into one business plan and maybe a smaller subsidiary document if your programs are unusually complex. Fabulous question.
Great. Then Daisy asks, do you build in the theory of change into the business plan or the BHAG or the KPIs?
I never use the word theory of change because it makes me sound like a nonprofit that's going to struggle. And forgive me, I don't mean to offend or disparage. There's many good people out there trying theory of change. The word that everybody else used for theory of change is strategy. Goal, strategy, milestones, and KPIs. I talk about in my book, use powerful language. Language sets something called a psycholinguistic framework in our mind. And I don't want to be fancy and fill you with jargon, but theory of change, logic models, those are very hard to understand, and very few people outside the nonprofit sector understand them. Every term that you need to plan your organization and run it effectively is contained in that business plan template. You don't need other ones. And the ones that are in there are in there for a good reason. They work. We've read the literature. We've launched this hundreds of times. I'm not saying I have a monopoly on wisdom, but I urge you to consider using terms that your audience, your funders are already familiar with. And, theory of change and logic models get really messy. They're very ambiguous. There's a lot of uncertainty in those. And you'll find that if you read the examples in our on our accelerator, if you look at the business plans that our clients have produced, it's so clear. It's so easy to understand. And that's the goal. And again, I don't want to push back. We're very opinionated about this stuff, but I've spent many years pulling organizations out of a lot of they're wandering around in this theory and this academic stuff around theory this, theory that. And the funny thing is, I remember a board meeting. The prospect said, "Oh, so you have a theory of change? Come back to me when you have some proof."
I like that. Few other questions. So Skylar says, under foundations, you suggest that outsourced grant writing gives you a higher ROI. Would this approach be beneficial for larger nonprofits with a designated grant writing team?
We've got some smart people on this call. Great question. Typically, when your grant revenue is over $1 million a year, you can that makes sense from a cost per dollar to in-house it. Remember the 10-to-1 on your cost per dollar? You should be spending $100,000 on your grant writer. If you're not getting the best grant writers, right? So I didn't even talk about how incredibly important it is to pay your staff competitive wages with the private sector, but that's one of the fundamental tenets of the book. As an aside, you write a business plan and then you hand it to a contractor. If you're getting again, this is rough numbers here. But if you're below $750 or $1 million a year, it pencils out to just do it to outsource it. And as soon as you tend to get around over $1 million, it tends to pay to have your own in-house person. But the grant library, the document that you use is the business plan. And we tell our clients, look, don't even, put a letter of interest and then attach the business plan, and you'll find the funders that really are looking for transparent, accountable, well-run organizations. I advise philanthropies right now, and they're setting up their entire grant process to get rid of the grant process. Just send me your business plan. So anyhow, I'm going off on a tangent there, but typically it's $1 million when you bring in your own grant writer.
Makes sense. Then Tracy says, Giving USA usually reports that corporate giving is a very small piece of the giving pie. How do you
Correct.
justify spending time on this if you are a small nonprofit, especially if you are in a market like Atlanta with a lot of large national nonprofits or national international corporations?
Well, the answer is it depends. Another super smart question. The key to a corporate partnership is having the right value proposition, and it's very mission dependent. So, for example, corporations can be incredibly powerful partners. They don't like giving money away, obviously, but if you can solve their business problem, if you can help them with employee engagement, and if you can help their branding, they turn into very, very good partners. So imagine you're an after-school program that gets low-income, marginalized youth into college and on track for employment. And you find a major employer that's struggling to diversify their workforce. If you're effective and you can talk that corporation's language, and if you have a good business plan and they're like, wow, these nonprofits, they're dreamers, they can't execute. They're very suspicious of nonprofits, and they're all coming to ask them for money. But if you go to them with a value proposition, would you like us to increase your pool of diverse candidates? We'll start creating a pathway for our service population to become your employees. And you can really dig in and have a long-term productive partnership, and you can get employees from that company mentoring your youth. And it's just another way to do it. And again, it's very mission specific, and it depends on your opportunity, and it depends on your landscape. But that's the type of deeper corporate partnerships that we've set up with our clients. I'm working with a client right now. We're setting up deep partnerships with pharma and biotech firms around the globe to introduce sustainability in their labs. They have this problem, we have the solution, and the entire organization has gone from 1 million to 7 million totally on corporate partnerships. So the answer is it depends. If you have a sophisticated approach and you know how to find the entrepreneurial opportunities before you, and you have access to expertise, you can often unpack value and find incredible resources where others don't see it.
Great tips. Alan says, thank you for this session. In your experience, what are the top indicators that a nonprofit is ready to shift from survival mode to a growth-oriented strategy, especially when funders still perceive it as grassroots or under-resourced?
We talk about the personal characteristics of leadership. And all of this presentation has been technical and strategic, but there's a human side. I write about this in my book. We look for 6 qualities of our nonprofit leaders. Very courageous. They have grit. They're willing to fail. They can handle the risk. They are urgent. They move with speed. They bias towards action and experiment, not analysis and reflection. They're disciplined, and they're focused, and they're highly empathetic. So it's those personal qualities. And many people have written about nonprofit and for-profit leadership before. I didn't add to that literature. I wrote a little bit of my book, but it boils down to, can you set a BHAG? Many people say, oh my gosh, what if we fail? It's not about you. It's about solving the problem. If you're working with vulnerable populations, if you're trying to create social justice, if you're attacking inequity, bad people are in charge. Let's solve some problems. And you're worried about your own organization. Let's actually, let's not put ourselves first. and if you're worried about optics, it looks better to have a BHAG and fail than to have a safe, ambiguous goal that, everyone's comfortable with. So I have strong opinions about it. And again, everybody in this space is trying to do their best. They're trying to do well-meaning things. We find that organizations that are ready to pursue a BHAG and actually nail down what success looks like in measurable, accountable terms, if you can get to that space and you're not married to it, if it doesn't work, if you try to shoot the moon and you only get to the stratosphere, you've still achieved amazing things. That's why we start with the BHAG. Are you really ready to say, we're gonna say that this is the problem we're going to solve, and we're going to put everything into it. And that's not everybody, and it doesn't mean they're bad people, but that's the type of person for which this impact methodology is really going to make a lot of sense.
Makes sense. And then Lynn says, is the accelerator for leadership or entire orgs? And there was another question asking, there was a little confusion about if the accelerator is free, but it's paid, correct? Could you just speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, and I'm struggling with this. So first of all, the accelerator is typically for CEOs or senior staff.
Mm-hmm.
And, let me be totally blunt. Up until the point we launched the nonprofit, it cost $12,000 a month to hire us. Now we generate millions of dollars in the first fiscal year, and we have 25-to-1 ROI on our fees. Not enough organizations could afford to hire us. I'm trying to democratize access to this methodology. So I started a nonprofit, and we are starting, there is a tuition. It's $200 a month for 6 months. So it costs about $1,000 to join it. We expect you to learn and complete the tuition in 6 months. And for that, you get expert support, you get community membership. We have to charge something to keep the lights on. I struggle with why I'm not making it free, but I know that the methodology can be so challenging and people are going to need support. I'm trying to charge just enough to get only the serious people who are ready to do it. Not that you're not serious if you're not doing it. I didn't mean to disparage anyone. I'm trying to find the Goldilocks level of pricing. So if you recognize that if you believe the value that you can add $1 million and grow your revenue, and if you read the case studies, it's a screaming deal, and we're trying to scale up the delivery of this methodology to nonprofits everywhere. So, I'm experimenting with a pricing model. It's brand new. We have clients that are successfully adopting the methodology in the low-cost accelerator model. We're launching a new website on this today, so you'll see it. But hopefully that's not a barrier for folks. I'm learning as I go about how to scale this up. And
Yeah.
by the way, I've scaled up dozens of nonprofits, but I'm trying to build the whole field. And this has made me incredibly humble, how difficult it is to scale anything. And it's made me a better consultant.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Then Patty says, I'm the ED for a nonprofit religious-based organization. We fundraise to provide grants to organizations that are also a 501c3. Are these strategies appropriate for us as a funder and not a provider?
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Even better. So if you use this playbook, your grant process can strengthen organizations. If you know anything about virtuous capital, about the VC model for good, it's incredibly powerful funder model where you can provide what's called, I can't stand this word, but forgive me, capacity building is another this weird nonprofit term. It's organizational development. And if you want to provide not just funding, but organizational development as an operating foundation, this is an incredibly powerful methodology. I'd be happy to share what we're doing with our other funders. And the grant process is send me your business plan. The report is send me your dashboard. You don't have to do any work.
Yeah. I love that. That's great. Then Deb says, how can a single person get this started? I have a product completed, but I don't have a paid team.
Awesome. You've got fire in your eyes and iron for stomach lining. You are an entrepreneur. You are a startup. This is your startup playbook. the number one problem that small organizations experience is they're out over their skis financially. They're bootstrapping. They're trying to stay alive, but they're spending all their money. So think about yourself not as a nonprofit, but as a startup, a social enterprise startup. So you want to start your work with adequate capital. So do what everybody else does. Write a business plan, generate, build the pro formas, the financial projections, get a pitch deck, get out there and start raising money. The accelerator is meant for startups. We've launched dozens of startups through this methodology. It ain't easy, but you have to make sure that what you're doing is truly unique. You have to have a clear value proposition. All this stuff is very, very helpful for you as an entrepreneur. I love people that start things up. You're a visionary, and it's hard. It's the hardest thing I think you can do professionally is build your own organization. Ask me how I know. I'm still struggling at it 19 years later. But yeah, this will work for you.
Great. And another thing that is hard, and probably the last question we'll have time for today, Kitty says, how can you convince higher ups to do something like this?
If I knew the answer to that question, they got to read the book. So many people, so many organizations are change averse, as you know, and they're in survival mode and they're doing what they're doing. And, they'll hear the fact that this process can generate, $1 million in new revenue and get them out of their problems, but it's going to bounce off their heads. And this book isn't for them. You have to be curious. You have to be willing to look outside of the typical domain. Send them a copy of the book and tell them to read it. The problem is most people don't read. They're information overload victims, understandably. They're stuck on their phone. Their kids are in trouble. Their marriage is struggling. This is hard stuff to absorb, right? But you start by reading the book, and you have to read it and then reread it. It's clear. I wrote it as simply as I could, but there's a lot of stuff in here. And it isn't for everybody. It's only for the people really willing to be one of those case studies. And, it's normal to be risk averse and change averse. So I don't know how to take somebody who's risk and change averse and get them to adopt this very bleeding edge methodology other than giving them a book. And, if you want me to join a board call with them to see if I can get them in the accelerator, I'll evangelize for you. It's the best I can do. That's a tough one.
That is a tough one. Probably one of the hardest things as well.
Visit GrantStation to see our latest online education offerings in the form of live webinars, interactive workshops, and on-demand learning. GrantStation.com.